back to like my experience on the dating apps several years ago before I like will never go on them again. It's I used to have this rule where if they didn't ask me a question back about myself in 3 messages, I was done because
Good.
that's not someone that's interested in getting to know me. That's not someone who's in the same wavelength as I am on how you should be dating and how you should be interacting with people. So why would I keep that person in my space? It just doesn't make any sense. But I think we're so connected. We're so invested. We're so available even when we're not available, right? We're available and it forces us to kind of get this like fatigue, this decision fatigue, this mental fatigue where we can't even take a moment to reflect on ourselves and say what's going on with me. So there's no way you're going to show up and be able to ask what's going on with somebody else.
Absolutely. And I think I'm so passionate about this because I know the pain of not feeling seen or heard or acknowledged by the people who love or claim to love me the most. And it's
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking and it's devastating and it induces that out of integrity emotion of me, which is wanting to yell, which when I'm
Yeah.
yelling, I'm upset. But if I've been pushed to that limit, without shaming or blaming anyone, including myself, something is completely out of alignment there. And it's a gift because we can, do some work. But whether it's the checkout person at the grocery store or my best friend or a client or a colleague or my neighbor, whether it's 2 seconds or 2 hours, I really want you to feel seen and heard and acknowledged in my presence and acknowledge people like, hey, I saw that podcast that you did about elephants in the wild. It was so good. And here's what I liked about it. That's going to mean so much because you're like, wow, you took the time to listen to my show. You're telling me something you liked about it. You're acknowledging me. Or, hey, you tell me something upsetting. And instead of being like, that sucks, just even, gosh, I'm so sorry. That sounds so frustrating. What did you learn about yourself? Or, how will you show up different? Like
Yeah.
maybe ask a question back to get you to reflect and move through it, or just even pause with that person. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know you've gone through so much. I also know how strong you are and you're going to get through it. What would be helpful for us to discuss
Right.
right now? Do you want to talk about this, or would you rather talk about this exciting opportunity you have coming up?
That is the key. Asking the person who you're supposed to be supporting what they need in that moment. And that can be so many things, but instead of like projecting your opinions or your advice, and I'm guilty, I'm a fixer recovering where I always want to throw some advice out there. I've got some thoughts on how you can get more out of this, but like the reality is a lot of times people don't need that. They just want someone to tell them it's going to be okay. They just want someone to listen to them, explain how they're actually feeling, because that's hard to do and you got to be patient with someone, but asking someone what they need from you in that moment. And by the way, words and phrasing matter. There is, let me know if I can do anything, and then tell me how I can help you, or tell me how I can support you. So like just being um, careful with your words and choosing the words that are actually inviting and not off-putting. Like, okay, I'm gonna head out. Let me know if you need anything, or versus, okay, I'm gonna head out. I'm here for you. Let me know how I can help you. It's very different.
Yeah. And I think something that see, like so many things came to mind when you were talking. But yeah, as you were talking, what came to mind for me is really how simple it is to connect with someone. We think it's this big challenging thing. But for instance, the other day, never happened to me, but my car battery died. So my car wouldn't start. And luckily it happened at my house, so I was safe. But it's still that feeling of, oh gosh, did I do something wrong? Or what happened? Or what's wrong with my car? I just had it serviced. And the guy came to help me out, and he did something which is, really all that any of us need. He's like, I got you, it's going to be okay, I've been doing this 20 years, I got you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm fine, I'm safe. Because I think underneath all of our aggravation or any emotion is this feeling of, am I safe? Whether it's like physically on
Yes.
a dangerous street or emotionally safe to share my heart with you, and are you going to reject me? Or and so I just, with anything, just let people know, like, I've got you. Or you call me sobbing right now for whatever reason, like, Nick, I may not have all the right answers now, but I've got you. I'm here for you. I think also asking people before, because, we all want to solve problems for people.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I've had to say to people, I don't need any advice. I'm not looking for you to solve my problem. I just need to share with you what just happened because I'm really upset. Like, can you just hold space and listen? And do you have the time right now? Because you might say, oh my God, I would love to. And yes, I can do that. I'm getting on Zoom in 2 minutes with a client and I have
Yeah.
to be fully present. So can I call you in an hour? And I will say yes. And I will be so grateful rather than you're like, you just need to do this or you need to tell them to F off. And like, you don't put
Yeah.
up with that. So before we give people feedback, ask them, do you want feedback? And the person might say no. And especially from you because maybe you're not a woman and you haven't been through that, or maybe like I only
Hmm.
need medical advice and you're not a doctor. So it is easier than we think. It's just these little fine tuning phrases or capacity to listen that is so effective.
And being intentional with your response. I think we're all so quick to react. And, you know, the other thing, we're also quick to react. We should be more intentional with how we respond, and we should be responsive, not reactive. I find that one thing that's been helpful to me is I now think about everything as we're all a snowflake, right? We're all looking and experiencing the human experience through a individual one in an infinite amount of glasses. And that's how we all view the world. And so what I mean by that is what's important to me right now is maybe not important to somebody else. And maybe somebody else has something that's more important to them right now that isn't even on my radar. And that person in that moment has tunnel vision to only see what that is. Or I have tunnel vision right now to only do this podcast recording with you. But that perspective has helped me really kind of stop and first say, okay, just because someone else needs something right now, I don't have to stop what I'm doing to give that. But it also gives me the perspective of when someone else needs something, you should give them, if it's, a friend or whatever it is, or a coworker even, you should give them that type of response as well, which is like, I can't do this right now, but here's my alternative solution for you. Because part of the reason I think we get so fatigued is because, as I said earlier, we're available on all these channels all the time, 24/7, and we're always stopping one thing, doing another, stopping one thing, doing another, and we don't take time to focus on anything. And when we take that time to focus and we still acknowledge people, that's when you can actually start to kind of like clear space for people, because you're not having the space occupied by your to-do list or whatever you have going on emotionally or mentally, and you're not letting the other people come in and sort of dictate the way that your thoughts and mind is working in the moment.
Yeah, and I think just to be fully present and put yourself in the shoes or the perspective of the other person. And maybe, I'm so upset because the Uber driver showed up an hour late and I'm like, I have to get to the airport 3 hours early and I'm freaking out we're going to miss our flight. And maybe you're like, that is not a big deal to you. You're happy the Uber's late because you like to show up at the airport last minute and just walk on the flight. But you're like, oh, Kate's my friend. I know that's important to her. So if I'm like, Nick, I'm freaking out, rather than, well, a lot of people make us feel crazy, make us feel like we're
Mm-hmm.
high maintenance, make us feel like we're difficult, make us feel like there's something wrong with us, but it's just our preference. And so just saying like, hun, I know that this is really upsetting to you, but let me call another car service. I know it's important to you to get there on time. Or, I just checked with Delta. We're still going to be 2 hours early. I got you. Let me go make you some chamomile tea just to calm your nerves. But I think even you just not judging me, first of all, and just
Right.
being like,
Great
stating,
point.
I know this is really important to you. I've got you. I promise you we're going to get there on time. And if for some reason we miss our flight, I already checked with the airline. There's a flight leaving an hour later. And I'm like, thank you so much. And then I don't even care about the flight or any of that. I just am like, I'm taken care of. Like you, and you let me
Mm-hmm.
know that like what's important to me is also important to you, not because you care, but because I care.
I that I think might be the secret to successful relationships, by the way. Is the two people coming together is never going to be flawless. In fact, it would be crazy if it was flawless, right? But when I think you hit the nail on the head. When you sit there and you care about what your person cares about, not because you care personally, but because you care about them, it can be such a game changer. It can really bring people together. And I know in the past I've done things, experienced things, watched movies or shows that I have no interest in watching, or experiences I have no interest in experiencing personally, but like watching my partner experience it or experiencing it with them has been very rewarding and very, very connection building. And I think that's something that we all lack, because everybody is, again, looking at the world through their own point of view, which is fine. There's no other way to do it. That's how everyone's going to do it. But when you look at it in a way and you experience it in a way where you don't react. Again, it's like the react response. You don't react and you don't put your experience on someone. You can really connect with them in a whole different level. And that's not just partners. I think that's, people at work, that's people in your life, that's your neighbor, that's your person that drives you crazy at work. Like, you can really build connection if you just take the time to stop reacting to the way that you see the world and your view of the world.
Yeah, and case in point today, why I got so upset right before we were recording by something that happened at the house, is people that just show up unannounced. And maybe if you've got nothing going on, it's not a big deal, but it's still a level of disrespect. And it doesn't matter if the person who disrespected your boundary thinks it's a big deal or not. It's a big deal to you. So I think it's important that we stop gaslighting ourselves as well, and stop judging and blaming ourselves, or like, wow, I reacted instead of reflected. And sometimes we don't have the patience, or we're not enlightened Buddhas. We're still flawed, beautifully flawed humans, where we still are reactive, but it does become a practice and the work that I do. But I think sometimes, just from a evolution perspective, it's even like it's like if someone's about to like run over you, you're screaming and yelling like, stop. And I think that's what happens when people are emotionally about to run us over, or like, our physical boundaries are being disrupted. I think sometimes it's just an act of self-protection and preservation. And so, as long as we can learn from it and talk about it. But something that came up for me in dating recently too, that it went way over the person's head, and it felt so foreign. And I'm like, why is this so foreign? Whereas like, and I'll tell you what it is in a second, but where the playing games and let me wait a certain amount of time before texting or texting back, and be complimentary, but too complimentary, because you don't want them to have a big head or feel a certain way. And what I like to say to people, let's say you and I just start dating and we're long distance and it's a texting thing. And I would say to you, and really, whatever you think, because it would show me if we're a match or not right away.
Completely.
But I would say to you, hey, what are your texting preferences? What would make you feel really good and really safe and really loved in a relationship with me as it relates to communication and texting? Do you want me to text you every morning when I wake up and say something funny, or just, say good morning? Do you not want me to text you until noon, for instance? And these things may sound silly, but you hear a lot of people freak out about like, it's noon and I haven't heard from him, or he doesn't call me every day. So I think if we just communicate those things up front, even if people think we're weird or needy or something, but that's a sign too. If someone thinks we're needy for requesting that they call me every day, then we're not a match. And how great that we know now rather than months down the line.
You're spot on with that. And I think that's being intentional, right? And I think to elaborate my point of view on that, which is very similar to yours, and I would just add a kind of like a little cherry on the top of it, is when we know what we want and we know what we need in a relationship, it is very, very easy to spot let's say, the overused term red flags. And just because you're seeing a red flag, that's a red flag for you, right? So if you see someone who texting preferences or calling preferences don't align with you, and there's no equal medium that you can meet at. And for example, I'm someone that doesn't like to talk on the phone. I don't like to talk on the phone for pretty much two reasons. One, I'm on the phone all day for work, or a Zoom almost all day for work every day. I do the podcast, right? I do, um, um, what's, gosh, brain fart myself now. Oh, I do, I'll have calls for work. I'll have calls for, my UCAM Foundation. I'll be doing this all day. And at the end of the day, like, I don't want to talk anymore. Sometimes I physically can't talk anymore because my throat's so dry, like literally that happens to me. And so it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I actually will make an effort to talk on the phone, but like, I also need that person to have the understanding that like, I can't do it every day. Like, I just don't have the brain power. And so I think like people have to meet in the middle on stuff, and everything isn't, so my point on that, everything isn't a red flag. But what you can do is start to figure out what you need in a relationship. And then when you have those things, you figure out what isn't that important and what you just let slide away, or learn to love about that person, or understand that's a key personality trait, but then recognize what are deal breakers for you. And when you spot a deal breaker, don't be afraid to walk away.
Yeah, and I think and your case in point, and let's say for me, I'm like, no, I need for whatever reason to talk to that person every day, and you're like, I'm not available for that. Some people, and very rigid in their ways, I'll be like, well, that's we're not a match, then it's not going to work. Where I would argue, especially because all relationships, especially our romantic relationships, they are assignments. They are here for our evolution, for our soul growth. No one's going to trigger you like your romantic partner, not even your parents. And so if you look at it like that, and so if you said that to me, if I'm like, for me to feel really safe and loved in a relationship, I need that daily connection on the phone. And you're like, for those reasons, which I respect, not able to give you that. I would then, for my own soul revolution, would say, well, instead of like, this isn't the right person, well, how about this is the right person? Because instead of needing that every day, that time I'm not on the phone with them, I can be on the phone with a friend or go to dinner with a friend. I can go to yoga and connect with myself. I can journal. I can do another activity so that you, when we do connect, have the capacity to show up more fully for me. You're not resentful. You're not irritated. Your boundaries and wishes are being respected. And then I can learn to meet my own needs so that the relationship is not about what can Nick give to me, rather what I can give to Nick. And then that feels really good to you. So you're thinking, gosh, my needs are met. What can I give to Kate rather than what can I get from Kate? Is everybody following me? And I may sound like a foreign alien because I am, but it's like, what if this was our thinking? And what if we could always see it as, ooh, this makes me feel insecure, where from a spiritual perspective, what a gift to work through my insecurities so that I can be a more secure partner to myself and my partner.
Thank you for listening to this clip from the full episode of Eyes Wide Open. Please like and subscribe for daily clips and new episodes that drop every Tuesday. I appreciate you.